Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Anima Season defense matches. I decided to bring Rhajat over to my Anima team this week, hoping she'd help the team fend off its usual problems. It would have been easier enough to slot her into Thrasir's position from last Anima season, but I wasn't too satisfied with that layout, so I ended up experimenting with that too. There are a few things I'm keeping an eye on this and I'm planning to iterate on the defense over the next few weeks. The current layout doesn't threaten too much of the map, and that's definitely something I'd like to fix. I'm also hoping to find a way to move the duo's hindrance back out of the 6th lane, since it seems to be the most common spot to find enemy catapults. I'm also experimenting with Elliewood. He's using a rally up this season, and I'm not usually too fond of rally traps, but it should be a fairly reliable way to get him out of this corner and threatening more of the map. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I do think that rallies tend to be exploitable by players who know how to do it, so if it ends up being a problem, he'll probably switch it up again. He's also a little vulnerable here to being sniped, since he's not covered by far save. Felix himself can actually be a weak point in this too. A bolt tower can drop him low enough to finish off easily, and there was one match at the end of the week that actually showed that I need to work on his actual defense stat a bit to deal with some extreme investment Lynja teams. It's also pretty easy to drag him away from the distant guards right now just by attacking Edelgard, so that's something I'm trying to figure out as well. I'm also really not liking Wings of Mercy for Dorothea. It tends to get her baited into combats that I'd rather she not bother with, more often than not, so I'm trying to figure out a way to replace it without necessarily pulling more aerobatics fodder that I don't have. I'm also thinking about switching her traits. Giving her an attack flaw would go a long way to preventing her from being baited as well, and potentially a fortress skill on top of that. I am hoping to iron all these problems out over time, but meanwhile there are still a lot of advantages to the layout. Ground orders and aerobatics, and the rally help keep the movement pretty unpredictable. And it's also very dangerous for any tank to try to enemy phase this team thanks to the combination of impacts and the flash effect. Especially since Rhajat and Felix and Elliewood, and sometimes Saros, all usually have access to that front line. Overall, the defenses went pretty well. It got a little rough at the end of the week, but most of the losses were mitigated by the lockout period, and they did give me some food for thought to improve the defenses going forward. So, let's get into the first match. This was a very fun way to start the week. They brought along a nearly max investment Brave Hector. He's running the Bonfire Special Fighter Mystic Boost set, which really just tries to make sure that he'll one-shot, or two-shot, and if they have a guard effect, anything that attacks him, and rely on Mystic Boost to sustain, and combined with Flayn, that actually works out really well. They've also got their bonus week Reagan, Naga, Altina, and Plumeria. They take a turn just to walk Hector into position. and just sort of park him here and hope for the best. Things actually nearly go a little awkwardly for us here. Rhajat doesn't have immediate access to Hector, but thankfully Ellie would survive some, and gets to lunge him forward and out of range of Flayn. Felix actually takes this next attack, just because he actually survives this combat, where Rhajat would not. But once that's done, Rajat's the only one with an attack that has a post-combat effect, even if she dies. And she actually chunks him pretty hard here. And, well, once Hector's that far down, it's easy for Cirrus to finish him off. Interestingly, Rhajat would actually survive that bonfire with enough investment. It's definitely a point in favor of trying to summon for her whenever she gets another rerun. And losing Hector's just enough for them to surrender that. Seeing a no knockout win is always a little interesting. It is also a little odd that they didn't bring a Dark Shrine for their bonus structure, which means their fortress is only level 5. I only noticed that when I was doing some math for Edelgard. They brought along a Lynn, who, well, needs no real introduction. She is very strong on Aether offenses. This Altina build's actually really fascinating. Time's Pulse gives her pretty easy access to Twin Blades, at least once per turn. And Sorcery Blade's a good way to help her punch through any walls physically that would usually be able to deal with her. Felix in particular would have problems with that if she was paired with Lucina. Although, the requirement of being next to Plumeria, or Ishtar on this team, is a bit of a drawback. This was kind of fun to see. I ended up doing some math afterwards just to double check myself. But I think what they were hoping to do is use Reagan to snipe Edelgard and get the map moving. Unfortunately, I did a little bit of tinkering to try and make sure that can't happen. And here they kind of realize that when they flip Reagan forward. They might have thought they had reposition on Reagan to pull Altina back and try something else, but after smiting her forward like that, they just surrender. This was interesting to see. It's pretty rare to see a back-to-back no knockout defense like that. And seeing a +10 Leon was fun too. I really wish she'd gotten a better refine than this. But I guess it's better than nothing, right? They've also got a +10 Robin, who does have his resplendent outfit, even if he's not using it. He still gets the stats. And a +3 Fallen Leon. Having 3 different Raven Tomes, all with Triangle Adept, feels like a really great way to shut down maps, especially if you can position properly and make sure that everybody only fights the things that they're strong against. It's neat to see. I actually used to rely on gemstone weapons very early on in the game, so it's fun to see it pop up in the Vault of Heaven. They take a couple of turns just to move into position. And a lot like the last map, I think they were trying to have Reagan pick off Edelgard to start this fight off. Unfortunately, even with debuffs and Plumeria involved, she just doesn't quite have enough punch to do it. And once they realize that there's no way to pick her off at the start, they just surrender. Back to normal defenses. This one brought along some really high investment units, starting with this +10 Duo Ephraim. He's really, really impressive to see. I don't think I would ever be able to merge him up myself, just because the combination of Heavy Blade 4 and low attack defense is too good. And while I do like Ephraim, he's not one of my favorites of the series, so... We've also got a +10 Tamari Tethys, who's also using Sudden Panic, which makes her really great at sabotaging an enemy team. We've got the Reagan, and a +10 Norne, who's interesting to see on this team, but she does make a really great secondary tank for Eliwood to back him up with. And they've also got this +1 Julia. They decide to start this right away, and park Ephraim to bait Eliwood and Edelgard, and probably Felix, but they might have underestimated Felix a bit.
Do I look merry? I'm sorry, Leon.
Felix actually even wins that attack check, which was really fun to see. And then he gets danced and moves forward to pick off Reagan as well.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
Dorothea Wings of Mercy's in to attack Naga, but it doesn't really accomplish anything. On the other hand, losing those two is enough for them to concede the match. This match was really fun to see, just because of the team they brought along. And with how it ended, too. They brought along a maxed out Farsafe Felix. It's really fun to see another one, honestly. And they've also got this Plumeria and a near save Edelgard, which pretty much matches the units that I've got on my defense team, which that's fun to see. I've also got a Forest, who is a really solid support for the two of them, honestly, with this Palm Staff and the Spurs. Especially if they can make sure that he's the one being attacked, which actually activates both Spurs for whoever jumps in to help, and also gives them this combat debuff on top. Plumeria also does a lot with that, thanks to her weapon and this distant guard. And Naga's here to help out too, Wings of Mercy. They test the trap on the first turn, which I guess just helps give them some information. Honestly, I don't really like the bolt trap in this position, but it's hard to find a good spot for it that can't be taken advantage of. Once they're settled in position, I think they might have been hoping to pick Edelgard off with Reagan, but they can't manage that, so they just end up moving up, getting everyone in range of their saviors, and saying go. Edelgard tanks Eliwood up pretty well here. He can't finish her off, and well, the panic doesn't do much since they avoided using visible buffs. Then things turn into a bit of a Felix fight. Unfortunately for them, our Felix has the advantage of a defense tile, and that means that their Felix's Glimmer is pretty useless.
You've shown your weakness. You've shown your weakness.
And while we don't quite finish that Felix off, Rhajat actually gets danced forward and can do those last 2 points of damage exactly.
These gifts.
And losing him is enough for them to surrender. As rare as 0 knockout wins are, 6 knockout wins are also really rare, so it's fun to see one of these. They brought along the classic combination of Brave Ike, who is so nearly maxed, He's just missing 1 level and 5 flowers. Or 1 merge, rather. And Brave Lucina, who's also running a couple of distant cards to help him out. And they also brought Fjorm along for isolation. Even without anything else, these 3 are a really great combination of units that can clear a lot of defenses without many problems. They've also got a Leaf, who's not quite in his bonus weeks yet, and Reagan and Naga. The double Wings of Mercy here is a great way to try and help clean things up after the initial turn. I'm not sure if they were hoping to pick someone off with Leaf here before the fight starts. They moved him into position to do it, but end up deciding not to try. He wouldn't get much done against Felix here. And they end up just parking Ike on the defense tile. Unfortunately, no follow-up means that Ike's quick riposte doesn't get anything done, and Rhajat actually does a lot of damage to him just in that first combat. And then she gets danced and finishes him off.
I left an opening.
The rest of our team can't quite get in range here. And they end up deciding to use Leaf to test the Bolt Trap, which lets Reagan use Wings of Mercy to finish Felix off with the adaptive damage. This does leave them really exposed for this next turn, though. And Rhajat jumps forward to clean out Leaf. Which lets Edelgard step in and deal with Reagan without even taking a counterattack.
I'll cut my own path. Not good enough.
Sadly, Ceres does run forward without getting anything done, but at this point, there's not much else they can do. Fjorm can finish Ceres off thanks to the effective damage from Naga. But from here, there's just not really much hope for it. Hollywood can finish Naga off.
Such power.
Then he gets danced, and can Gale Force his way through the rest of the team.
I can't be your bride.
Father, I'm sorry.
This was neat to see too. I haven't seen this many maxed out Norns in a while, actually. She's very impressive, really, although she might want to be using close counter instead of close foil, especially with Ceres in the wind now. She's a very common sight on defense teams, and not being able to counterattack her might backfire if you're not careful. We've also got this plus 10 Corin. He's very good as a support, and this build basically lets him give plus 9 to each defense along with plus 5 attack and speed to his support partner just by standing near them. We've also got a plus 10 Versa, who's another unit I haven't seen much of lately, probably because I don't run many visible buffs on my defenses, but she's still a really good support. The Spectrum Sabotage and Panic is really useful. And Fjorm is, again, always really great to have just for isolation. This is one that I liked seeing just because it sort of highlighted that, yeah, Hollywood is vulnerable to being sniped since he's not in range of Felix anymore. And that's their plan of attack after they get in position. They go in with the Bolt Tower turn, even though they're not really taking advantage of it. And they flip Norne forward and never take out Elliewood. And I think they were hoping to sort of bottleneck the map on Norne. Unfortunately, she can't counterattack Seros, and well, even if she could, I don't know that she'd get a whole lot done. And once Seros gets danced, Felix can jump over her and pick off Corrin.
This can't be.
And then Seros can move in and one-shot Altina.
No, but how?
And even though Edelgard can't get much done against Norne,
Pin you down.
it's not really like she can get much done either. Although, she does get to knock out Rhajat on the counter.
Ta. Pin you down.
Getting those 2 knockouts is enough for them to just surrender and move on, though. It's kind of unfortunate to see messy losses like this. Mostly because I don't mind getting them, because getting 2 knockouts is already really good. But it makes it tricky to learn something from the defense and try to adapt it to make sure that it tightens up a bit. They've got a Lynn and Sigurd, along with their Altina, Reagan, +10 Naga, and Plumeria. They got a really lucky combination of structures here, with the Bolt Tower that dodges our Catapult, and a Catapult that snipes our Duo's Hindrance. And if I'm honest, I think I got a little lucky with this one. But I won't complain. It does have me thinking about ways to buffer Felix so that he can survive most Lyns, even after a Bolt Tower hit. Yeah, because with the Bolt Tower it's easy enough for Lynn to pick Felix off here. And then with dance support, it's easy to clean things up.
I don't think so.
The dagger debuff is enough for Reagan to punch through Edelgard too. But moving her forward to block Elliewood seems a bit questionable.
You're a wonder.
Well, at least if they ended up using Lynn's Duo skill, which I think they forgot, or misclicked, or maybe they just had their end of turn settings incorrect.
Accept your punishment.
Because from here it would have been very easy to have Lynn use her Duo skill and at least pick off Elliewood, and probably Plumeria or Mirabilis as well.
Yeah.
Or Dorothea even. But, doubt that, it's Elliewood Gale first time. He picks up a pretty easy knockout on Sigurd. And then Dorothea actually gets to use Wings of Mercy in a good way for once. And actually gets to pick up a knockout on Plumeria.
Let's give them a show. Yeah. I knew it.
Sadly, Mirabilis can't reach Elliewood, so she just ends up attacking Lynn. And they decide to finish things off from here.
Lynn, you're a wonder. Accept your punishment.
It's not hard, especially with everyone vulnerable to Lynn like this.
Go for it. Sit.
Then Reagan can pick up the pot, and everyone pulls back out of range. And Mirabilis on her own isn't getting anything done. So, like I said, it was a bit sloppy. I honestly don't think they even had to lose anybody as long as they used Lynn's duo skill earlier, but oh well. This one was really fun to see on the heels of that last match. They brought along a +10 Ayra with her Duo Ephraim. Just really impressive to see. 60 visible speed is just, woof, really, really good. And she's also using Spurn, which, I don't know, I think with her Duo Ephraim and with Flayn backing her up, she'd be a lot better off with null follow-up. Or null C disrupt even. But it's still pretty impressive. And this Plumeria is maxed out as well, along with an extra one for the extra speed bonus. They've also got a New Year's Zana, who completes this sabotage set thanks to her bow and the sabotage attack, which really cripples an enemy team. And they've also got this +10 bonus week Reagan. A lot like some of the earlier matches, I think they were hoping to snipe Betelgeuse to start this fight off. Unfortunately for them, Reagan's attack is high enough that Dorothy is actually chilling her attack, and it lowers her attack just enough that she can't quite finish Edelgard off here. I mathed it out and she'd actually survive with 1 hit point, so they end up just planting Ayra here and hoping for the best. Unfortunately for them, Rhajat gets to jump forward first, since Ayra would actually be able to knock out anyone else who attacked her as well. And since Rhajat attacked first, that leaves Ayra completely exposed. She gets a lot of damage reduction, but then gets pulled out of range of Flayn and gets her buffs panicked. And Zeros can actually finish her off pretty easily from there.
Sorry.
They keep going here. They use Reagan to finish Eliud off,
Just like Fafnir.
which she can do pretty easily, especially with her special. Unfortunately, they might have wanted to save that special, because without it, Reagan can't actually knock Zeros out.
Yeah.
And she also can't knock Felix out. The charged iceberg from Zeros would actually mean that Reagan got one-shotted on counterattack, even with the damage reduction. And since she can't charge her special against Felix, well, they're kind of out of options at that point, so they surrender and move on. This was an interesting match to see. Even though we lost it, we did still get a knockout, and I think this was a good example of a match that would have gone very differently if Rhajat had a little bit more investment. And they brought along a Marianne and a Fjord, and this Festival of Lynja was actually a really good answer to Zeros. Gale Force Reagan, Naga, and an Altina. They take a few turns to set up. They test the trap at the start, and spend a couple of turns healing. And then they also open up the structures in front of Rhajat, which actually ends up being a really important part of their strategy. They start by attacking Felix here, and while Marianne can't quite finish him off, she also gets a really solid combat in and doesn't get hurt very much by it. and they dance her forward. And this looks a little bit risky, but I think they've actually figured it out really cleverly here. Because they've isolated Mirabilis, they actually end up getting to bait both dancers into attacking Marianne. And even though Rhajat does make the first attack, she's not fast enough, yet at least, to be able to double Marianne. And then Dorothea and Mirabilis both get baited into attacking her. They actually didn't have to isolate Mirabilis here since she does 5 damage, but they did it just to be safe, I think. And from here the team's a lot more exposed. Lynja, thanks to effective damage and color advantage, has no problems taking down Saros. And Marianne can pick off Mirabilis.
My blood compels me.
Before they evacuate their team. And once again, Dorothea actually gets baited forward here. Which leaves the team pretty exposed. From here it looked really good for them, honestly, and I thought they were... well, I thought they should be able to finish this without suffering any losses. Marianne can finish, or help finish Edelgard off.
No mercy.
But since Reagan's actually using Gale Force, Edelgard does get to hit her before she goes down. Marianne can finish Hollywood off easily enough, though.
Stay back.
And Naga can deal with Dorothea. I think they might have forgotten about Rhajat's effective damage against cavalry, though.
You're still here? Not good enough.
Although, even without the effective damage, the Glimmer probably would have been enough to finish Regan off. I decided to finish the map anyway. It's very easy to do from there. Marianne can pick up a pot, and Altina can deal with Rhajat. So yeah, a bit unfortunate, but I think with a little more investment and a speed asset, Rhajat would probably have been able to just deal with Marianne on her own. So this wasn't quite how I wanted to end the week with my defenses, but it did provide a fun rematch, and gave me some food for thought for how to really Lynja-proof this defense. To be fair, I haven't actually seen a Lynja team that's got quite this much support for her. On top of the Duo Peony, supported with her for up to plus 12 attack, they've also got 3 different sources of goad flyers. Along with a drive attack, a spur attack, and Plumeria's weapon. It's a lot, honestly, and it's a significantly higher amount of attack than you'll see on even most plus 10 Lynjas, so I hadn't really prepared the defense for something like this. It is good to see, though. It shows me what people are doing with Lynja strategies, and gives me an idea of how much more defense I need to stack on Felix to help deal with this, and potentially help deal with Lynjas even after a Bolt Tower. I do have a few ideas for this. Obviously, one of the easiest ways to handle it is just including Bracer on the team, but I do think that Rhajat actually does a lot more work than Thracier, especially outside of Thracier's bonus weeks.
Go for it.
So I'd like to try and make this work without her, as much as possible.
Lynn, you're a
And
wonder.
they do have to position properly to make sure that Lynn gets enough attack to take Felix out. But once he's out of the way, it's not hard for them to clean up this left side of the map.
Go for it.
And they pull all of their units back out of range of Rhajat,
Prepare yourself.
which unfortunately ends up baiting Rhajat into attacking Ninian, and means that she doesn't get danced a second time. A second dance probably would have let her secure a knockout, so that's a little unfortunate to see. Yeah. And from there it's very easy for them to clean this up.
Lynn, you're a wonder.
After they take Dorothea and Rhajat out, Mirabilis can't do anything on her own.
I'm going to stop you.
And, well, 3 dancers does a lot to make sure that, well, they have all the actions they need.
Go for it. Prepare yourself.
So yeah, it's an unfortunate way to finish the week defense-wise, but like I said, it's food for thought. I think I'm going to experiment with a defense tactic, actually, since having attack-defense unity leaves Felix mostly immune to panic effects. He gets to keep that buff no matter what. And it'll help a lot with Lynn. I might also switch him to plus defense, and I'm almost definitely going to end up putting some distant guards on Saros. So yeah, again, interesting way to finish the week, and it gives me some insight for adapting the defense. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.